This conference will now be recorded.
I was driving that far. Yeah, I drive it. I'm my nervous here.
All right. Just about to get started.
This resolution only to be stopped.
All right, it's 4 o'clock. Infrastructure meeting, Roswell, City of New Mexico, Monday, October 25th, 2021. Could I get a roll call, please?
Councilor Robert,
Here.
Councilor Kennard,
Here.
Councilor Lopez, Councilor Sanchez.
Here. Okay, could I get a motion to approve the agenda in the minutes, please?
Yes, I move to approve the agenda and the minutes for the September 27th, 2021 Infrastructure Committee meeting.
Do you have a motion, a second?
Yes.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Mr. Nahar, project updates.
Mr. Chairman and committee, our first item is the update on the Deming Bridge. The deck was poured last week. That's what you see them pumping the concrete on the deck. And this, what they're doing now is doing the concrete for the bottom of the aprons right here between the wing walls. That'll be the last of the concrete on the structure, and then we'll start backfilling and building the road. So looks like we'll be out of the river pretty soon.
What do you think your ETA is now?
Probably first, second week of December for a ribbon cutting is what we're thinking.
Okay. Great.
Item 2, we had the substantial completion inspection for the landfill last Wednesday on the 22nd. We have a minor punch list. Those are pictures of the completed landfill. The paperwork is being submitted to New Mexico ED. Once New Mexico ED says we can go in there, then we'll be able to start that landfill. But if you can see in the background, that's on the very top, that's the cell they're working on there. They still have a little bit of room to get us to those 30, 45 days, whatever the reprocess would be. So I think we made it.
All right, any questions on the committee on those reports? Great. I did want to note before we get started our next item that Commissioner Cavan and Taylor are here, as well as quite a few other counselors as well, especially about this next thing that we're be talking about, which is the General Administrative Philosophy of the Air Center, which says here we're really talking about our project priorities as well. This is a discussion that we're going to have. There's no action going to be taken today at all. You know, I've been working with Joe on putting this together, and I want to have a couple brief comments, Joe, before we let you have the floor. You know, the city has had the airport asset since the federal government gave it up when they closed the base in the late 60s. And it is, you know, the city's job to lead the direction of that airport. But we need to be leading all of the stakeholders. Stakeholders are varied in that nature. And I think, you know, one of the things that makes this whole thing made it challenging, and will always be challenging, one challenging thing about government is one of the things that makes our government strong, which is we have a pretty robust separation of powers. Not only do we have executive, legislative, and judicial separations, we also have federal, state, and local governments as well. And so anytime you have that kind of separation of power, there's always getting everything working together and going in the right direction is always challenging. It takes a lot of goodwill, faith, communication. And in that spirit, that's why we've invited some of the commissioners here today, and Joe's presenting. I don't want to talk, and I think Joe might get into this a little bit, but I do want to say that as the city's responsibility to lead the direction of the airport, lead not only our staff, but also to bring in stakeholders and help lead them along as well as they want to help. Because, and stakeholders, I think, is a great way to put it. Obviously, the reason why the government, the feds give us money is they have an interest in keeping our airport open. The reason why the state gives us money is they have an interest in keeping the airport going. Certainly, the county has an interest in keeping the airport going, and they're all very important stakeholders. And so as we lead, we definitely need to continue to increase and improve those relationships so that we can move forward. It's not like when you dance, you always step on people's toes. At least I do when I dance. But we want to move forward, continue to dance. In our general process here at the city, there's a couple of ways we get things done. Obviously we have our committees that feed into city council. The city council makes decisions, but by and large, the bulk of the authority and the power of all of our departments, including the airport, is given to our city manager. And I do want to recognize that everything that happens at the airport comes under Joe's purview. It's one of the things we've hired him for, his responsibility, and his staff, of course. He doesn't do everything by himself, fortunately. But I think that's important as we look at this whole thing. Obviously, he has certain requirements that he has to fulfill anytime he does anything in the city to the council. But ultimately, at this point in this juncture, we certainly are relying on Joe to provide leadership in that regard. He is effectively our executive for the airport. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joe. And I guess what I asked Joe for, I asked him for two things that he would present on. I asked him if he would present, number one, our basic philosophy of the airport. We really haven't had that. Well, we had a lot of internal conversations. We kind of know it. I said, let's see if we can kind of put it together in like one meal so we can kind of digest it and suck that in. What is the philosophy that city's using when they're making decisions about what's happening at the airport? And then the second thing, which I think is maybe a little more pertinent to the actual issues of talking about how can we be aligned with our request to the state for getting funding, is what are the priority projects that city has. So I think that's really important that we all understand that, Joe and his staff and Scott, they're out there and they're working on this all the time. And certainly, slightly below the political back and forth of it, they're out there day in, day out. And so we certainly do rely on them to help provide guidance in that direction. And not only rely on them, we expect it of them. We expect them to have an opinion about what projects are the most important, what should be happening next. So with that introduction, Joe,
Okay.
I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee members, representatives from Chaves County, general public, city councilors and everything. Thank you. And I'm going to try to touch on all of everything that Councilor Roebuck, the chair of infrastructure, has already stated within that pattern. But I'm going to walk through this thing. What I found as I was putting this report together was it is a very expansive asset for the city. It has a lot of different legs to it. It has a lot of different things. So I've tried to narrow some of this stuff down. I've tried to make sure that everybody can understand exactly from the direction of the city council, exactly how the city manager and all of the staff members actually operate with the air center. Keep in mind that the Roswell Air Center, we've owned it for over 53 years. It's a city-owned asset that we've acquired when the Walker Air Force Base closed. We obligate the entire assessed value of the city of Roswell, which is a little over $700 million of assessed value that goes to support the federal guarantees for any of the work that happens out there at the Air Center. We have a $17 million budget this year that includes operations and capital expenditures. Along with that, we have 14 employees that are housed out at the Air Center. And then I would say that we have 642 auxiliary employees that assist the Air Center as needed And then along with those committed resources to the Air Center, we have all of our partnerships, whether it be the EDC, whether it be Chavez County, whether it be all the different stakeholders that the chair had already mentioned. So trying to roll that into something that I can get you out of here before the end of the day was challenging to that. So I'm going to call this about a 25 to 30,000 foot level. It's not up at the 50,000, all that high. It's a little bit closer to the ground, but it doesn't have all the bells, all the whistles. That doesn't have all the little pieces that make it up. But you're going to see all these little nuances within the whole structure. And so it's a mid-level explanation. I'm going to start with the vision and what the vision is, because we have created at least something that we operate by. We have not ever taken a formal council action outside of other reports that have leaned on some type of vision. I want to talk about the guiding leadership directions, because my role as the city manager is to do what the city council needs me to do and to operate the city. I'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going to talk a little bit about the challenges that have faced us for years within that whole structure. And then we're going to get into the details of the primary parts of any type of operation, any type of system or standardization of how we're going to treat our assets. It all falls to the resources that are allocated to it. That includes personnel, facilities, the infrastructure support network, and I'll explain that a little bit more before I get done. And then, of course, the projects that we have listed there. So I'm going to try to cover all of these, and we'll get out of here by breakfast tomorrow. All right, so let me start with the vision. Now, the vision of the Roswell Air Center is to provide a safe, business-friendly, cost-effective environment for air transportation, aeronautical services, industry, while contributing to generating economic benefit as a gateway for southeastern New Mexico. When the city council adopted the report from the Airport Authority Task Force, this vision was laid into that report. So this is the closest thing that we have to some type of a vision that has a well-rounded edge to it. You can see that it is, of course, visions are meant to be very encompassing of everything, but it is, I guess you stay with the keywords there: safe, business-friendly, cost-effective, air transportation, aeronautical, industries, economic benefit to southeastern New Mexico. The bottom section of this slide here is the administrative implementation of that vision. It is my belief that my role is to create a focused approach and build consensus for action. So we go back to what the chair stated about the stakeholders and all of these different individuals that have an opinion about how the Air Center should run. I'm to take all of that information and develop out some type of focused action where we can get 655 positions of the city, get all of the businesses that have over, the 800, 900 jobs that are out there, and move it in some type of a focused direction to help support the Air Center. Our initial effort over the past 5 years has been to reset a lot of different foundational matters. And so I've been here about 4.5 years. I would say that a lot of this work began before I came on board, but we continue to work on that focus, because as you look at the history of a 53-year history with the Air Center, we had really good years and we had difficult years. There was a lot of different decision making that happened over the period of time. I look back at the Millennial Bus Plant as being one that was a big item in the 80s. And hindsight being 2020, we struggle with that relationship today, but in the 80s, I'm sure it was a good decision at that point in time, because it generated 3,000 jobs. It was on the front cusp of this stuff, and we should have taken those actions. But a lot of times changed, and so we have to go back to that. I do have the belief, and I think this is something that we talked about. It came out of the Airport Authority Task Force meeting as well too, that the Air Center will operate better if the appropriate resources are dedicated to its efforts. And so we've been slowly rebuilding this whole system as to how we're going to do the business. And when we look at all of the information about the other airport authorities that were out there, what you see predominantly is that they have more resources dedicated to it, and they're functioning at a higher dollar level. So the commitment is a little bit differently. So the whole idea is to try to get our Air Center situated where we can kind of move that direction. Really quickly with the guiding leadership directions, I like to have things in writing as best as possible, but we go back to the city code and I stayed out of all the federal guidelines, all the state guidelines and everything. I just stayed with the local stuff just so you had a kind of a clear understanding of how I function as well too. Of course, the city code, chapter 2, division 3, it talks about the responsibilities of the city manager. It was adopted by the city council in 1962. The year I was born, I'm assuming they knew I was coming. And so, all right.
It's a good year, Joe.
Yeah. And then we get into, and this was the second feasibility study and action plan. It was adopted by the city council in 2017. I believe I just came on board when the Roswell International Air Center Economic Feasibility Study and Action Plan was adopted by the city council. This is the second one. We had one that it was back a few years before that. This was kind of an updated version of that. It has about 50 different goals and structures within there of how we can move the air center forward. It's got some master plan pieces in it. Throw into it, one of the first things that I asked the city council to adopt when I got here. Scott Stark was the interim airport manager at the time. We removed the interim title. And so our first action together was to create this airport lease policy and property management plan, which was adopted by the city council in October. One of the arguments that everybody had was that we should have our leases at market rate. And we should be operating, the air center as a business. We should be doing all these different pieces of the air center. This lease policy and the challenge we had is that, well, we have 10 city councilors, we have an elected mayor. We have challenges trying to make decisions because of the size of the body. What this policy and property management plan was to take out and put criteria in place that would say, this is how we're going to operate. So if all the leases come in with a CPI increase with it, if they meet these term limits, if they meet this information, then it's just a formal blessing of the council. What the council struggles with more often than not are the exceptions to the rule of any of our lease documents. And so this document was supposed to help with that. And we've been utilizing it since then. In July of 2021, we created the Air Center Lease Rate Analysis Report. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the presentation. But that was the document that for over 3 years, I tried to receive a market rate of what are these buildings worth out there, a market rate. I was working with the real estate industry trying to discover what market rate is. And of course, at the end of the day, everybody in here that knows economics, market rate is what you can get somebody to pay for the building, the space. And so, but this document actually established some rates because I could not get a very clear picture from the real estate industry. So we created our own, and it seems to be working. And I'll explain those a little bit later. So all of this information here, along with the ongoing conversations and everything, are designed to help me understand how to move our resources to accomplish something out at the Air Center. Some of the challenges that we have. One of the biggest challenges I know when I got here as well too was a lack of focus on continuous improvement in the growth of the Air Center. And I'll talk about the 3 points there, but one of the big things with the continuous improvement and growth, there's a whole strategy that I'll share with you today as well too, is that we were waiting for somebody to come by that wanted to build there, rather than to go out there and target market and say, we want you to come here. We were waiting for somebody to say, I would like to be here. And the whole strategy is a little bit different. It's a very good economic development tool as well too. And so we wanted to build that process. One of the challenges we had with even staying with that improvement was job responsibilities need to be relearned as personnel changes. City of Roswell has essentially about 25% attrition ratio on its staff. And so I lose 1/4 of my staff. I don't know which ones I'm going to lose, but I lose them about every year. I have to rebuild that. Over the last 4 years, we've been working on benefits and salaries in order to try to help offset that. But the challenge is that when we lose these individuals, we have nobody to train or nobody to prepare them for the succession planning. So we're starting over more often than not. And I think that's the big challenge that we want to make sure that we kind of stop with that. Past funding and revenue creation is based upon the economic climate. Roswell's history has not been all flowers and rainbows. It has been very challenging based upon the marketplace, based on trying to get people here. So we've had really lean years and we've had really good years. And the whole concept of continuous improvement is to make sure that we keep the Air Center on an upward trend as long as possible, because as you come off that cycle, it's a very difficult, the decision making gets a little different. Some of the decisions made over the 53-year history have appeared to have stifled and slowed the growth of the Air Center. You know, looking back at a lot of these decisions, I will say that they were the most appropriate at the time, but we have challenged with them in today's world as where business tries to move faster. And so what we see is that some of these decisions that have been traditional in nature, we've not been able to move off of them as quickly as we should. And so it has slowed us down at the Air Center. Many of our studies at the Air Center over the past 10 or 15 years tackled systemic issues rather than the direct curing of the root problem. When I look at the feasibility study that we approved in 2017, a lot of the conditions in there are what I call systemic. It is trying to manage the cold. It is not curing the cold. It is trying to deal with some semblance of that. So when we look at something and we say, well, it's because our council's too large, that's a systemic approach to that. We don't look at how to operate within that structure to make it function better. We looked at it, can we replace it and can we do different things? So I would say that the systemic decisions split the ability to tackle the issues in a concerted approach. And that's something that all of our stakeholders of the Air Center have struggled with. And that's where the personality issues get involved and everything else. And so a lot of challenges out there. And so I guess my goal as staff is related to is I try to cross through all of that and try to make sense of exactly what is being said. Let me talk a little bit about the resources of personnel. The success of the Air Center rests on the abilities of those hired to manage it. No ifs, ands, or buts about that. They're the ones that are going to provide all the professional knowledge, all the information, whether it be the engineers, whether it be the operations, whether it be the economic development side of this. If we don't have the people with the abilities to do that, we will never succeed at that. The city's goal was to ensure that appropriate personnel to manage the center is at a high standard. Since 2017, we've increased staff out there by 20%. I believe it's 4 extra positions as of this year from back in 2017. Our challenge on the front side, and that's when I talk about the foundational blocks, is all based upon knowing which positions we need and when. And so the whole idea of that, we believe that there's tentative plans. We would like to increase some additional staffing over the next 3 years of about 40%. We don't believe that we have all the resources in place yet with the current staffing. And I think the idea now is that we're going to continue to focus that and try to bring in some additional resources to get there. If we are able to bring staff up to that level, it'll match up to any other comparable authority, Air Center out there of the same size and everything. We will have the right amount of resources in order to make the magic happen and make the growth happen. As the responsibilities are researched and better detailed, we will continue to adjust that staffing. I broke down exactly all these different sections of staffing. I won't go through them a lot, but the office and professional staff includes general operations, terminal security, business retention, tenant relations, business attraction, marketing. So all of that staff there is associated with what I call the general operations of the Air Center, whether it be retention or attraction for anything else that's happening out there. Throw on top of it, we have over 5,000 acres out at the old base. We have 4,000 developable acres out there. And it takes people to maintain it, takes people in the grounds, takes people to clean it. The square footage, acreage comparables there is how much we look at when we're trying to figure out 50,000 square foot per maintenance employee, full-time maintenance. That's an industry standard there. And what we look at is those that are the lease agreements with all of our buildings out there. Are we maintaining anything in them? Right now, most of our leases do structural, and then the tenant is responsible for cleaning or replacement of the toilet paper roll holder or any of that nature. We want to make sure we understand that because the value to that lease also associates with how much resources we have to dedicate it to it. Grounds 20 acres per FTE. That acreage changes a little bit because we use some very big equipment out there in the main area around the runway to cut grass. We don't need to use smaller equipment. That makes the square acreage change a lot. However, with the grounds also, they have to maintain all of those lights out there that have to come on when people are coming up and down on that runway. And so all of that work has to be in there. Cleaning, of course, 28,000 per FTE is the industry standard. This affects all the city operated segments such as the terminal. Just some of the other operations that we talk about and we look at just to make sure that you understand is that within every service that the city can provide, it can be also contracted out. It can be changed as to how we actually get that work done. In this case, the FBO, the fixed based operator contract that is out there, it's AppFlight is doing that work for us. And I'm not suggesting they're doing a great job, not suggesting that, but that is something that we could take internally if we thought that there was a benefit to it. So that's the refueling of the planes. That's there's a lot of different things that go into an FBO, but those are operations that can be considered in the future. So personnel is a kind of a continuation of what are we trying to accomplish and where are we going. Let me go into the terminal plan really quickly because the terminal is a beast by itself along with all of the industry stuff that is out there. And with the terminal, we continue to work at expanding the services. We want to make sure that we're protecting and expanding all the flights to and from Roswell. We have the 3 flights to Dallas. We have 2 flights to Phoenix. I believe they've actually postponed one of the flights to Phoenix right now due to some COVID stuff and staffing and everything else. So we hope that that second flight comes back to Phoenix. That was a really good, nice addition there. Of course, negotiations are ongoing to Denver. And there's been conversations about boutique airlines going to Las Vegas, Albuquerque, Houston, all those different ones. And we believe that there's been enough interest in this that when we look at the terminal, we need to expand our terminal in order to maintain some of those services. Again, expanding services, reopening the cafe and bar for that value added benefit. Having the Walker Air Force Museum out there is a very good benefit as a value added service within that structure. We want to make sure that that place is something that it's even more than just the flights because the flights are 60 people at a time and coming or going. And we want to make sure that that terminal is a vibrant piece of everybody utilizing it more often. Like I said, there's 800 to 900 jobs out there that we could be bringing to the terminal to help with the restaurant and the bar. Throw over on the other side a bunch of terminal projects, and I'll talk about these a little bit later too, but the bag drop and inspection area, we are already undergoing that project to expand that area so that right now when bags go into that magic room in the back, every one of the bags are opened and every one of them are inspected physically by an individual. The expansion of that area there will include more technology so that they don't have to go through all these different bags. They're going to be able to run them through the machinery as well. The second ticket counter is going to be very important for us as we talk because again, the hubs for Denver, Houston are a different carrier than what we have for Dallas and Phoenix. Expanding the secure area. I was out there just a week and a half ago, and of course we have the Phoenix flight leaving and the Dallas flight leaving at the same time in the morning. And that secure area is completely packed with people that on top of each other. The secure area needs to be able to hold 120, 150 people if we're going to do that work right. And so looking at that, I said temporary on here because there's also a big conversation about what we're going to do with the terminal itself, whether we build something completely brand new, whether we expand the one that we have. But I will tell you right now that our goal and our push will be bringing a plan for temporary expansion of the secure area in some form or fashion to the city council in the very near future. I think near future being within the next year, I should say, because near future could be next week, but I expect it to take a little bit longer. The baggage pickup area, of course, trying to make that a little more modernized as well too. And of course, we are ongoing with some of the MAP funding that is out there, doing some additional parking lots. And just for everybody's sake that doesn't know what MAP is, that was when military bases were closed. The federal government assists with funding in order to help get it changed from this purpose of the military to the otherwise. The age of our facility, we were not supposed to receive any of that MAP funding, but I know that was one thing that the mayor worked on really hard when I first got here, was to challenge that system. We were effective in getting that MAP funding, which is additional millions of dollars that can go into our terminal. So that's the terminal. We need to do a lot of work with that as we go through that. So here, these are just some of the bigger points of that terminal. I'm going to spend a little time on this slide because this is the managed property and the land leases. And this serves the purpose for a lot of different reasons. So on the map, and you can see that it is not the complete base that runs along Hobson Road up on the north end. It shows all that center area as being outside of what we consider the air center proper. This includes the area inside of the fence, which is the AOA area, which is you can't enter without a badge or some type of somebody to go with you. But then you also have all this area that's up on the northeast corner, all the way wrapping around where the Millennial Bus Plant is and all of that area. That is property that can be utilized for the advancement of the air center as well too. So along with the stuff inside of the fence, there is area outside of the fence that can be auxiliary type businesses and such. There are some exceptions to this map that don't match up entirely. We have different services within different areas, but I would have hated to explain exactly why we have a little parcel in the middle of this one, but not over there. So all of these space functions that are in this area include aviation, warehousing, manufacturing, and office. The northeast corner there, where up northeast from Ergon, where the asphalt emulsion plant is, right along the spur, EDC and the city have been working on a certified industrial area for that property, trying to get certifications from Burlington Northern, so it has rail service, and then also from Excel Energy for the energy service as well too. And if some of you may not remember, but we turned over the lateral electric line that crossed over the property to Excel Energy. When I first got here, you guys were completing that within the city, so that Excel expanded their amount of electric. We expanded the amount of water we have out there in order to help prepare where we're going. On this map as well too is that we do building and land leases. Our land leases are negotiated at a minimum of about 10 cents per square foot and up to approximately 23 cents per square foot. I believe we have them all over that range there, depending on when they came in, depending on what the use of the land is. That's how we kind of decide where those land leases are. We kind of landed on the minimum being a 10 cents a square foot just because of what everybody else is charging for the land and everything. We still have a few that are low, but we don't change current tenant leases until that lease expires, and we try to bring everybody up to where we'd have to be. One of the new approaches that we have in 2021 is that this is some of these buildings are over 53 years old. So we've had the Air Center for 53 years, but some of those buildings out there have been out there for even longer. So they're 75 years old. They've been out there for a while. Because I talked a little bit about the economics and the decisions of the city over the years. There were lean years that we couldn't put enough money into the buildings. When you don't put money into a building, they wear out a little bit faster than you would like. Some of the structures we can still continue to use, but some of the buildings have come to their end of their useful life. And so in order to maintain a high standard for the Air Center, we are now recommending to City Council to demo certain buildings out there so that we can put something new on that property. Building 112 is our first example of that. That is along the railroad spur south of Ergon. It's a long building. It's got its sister building, 115, right on the other side of the tracks. And because there's some mold problems and some issues with that building, we believe that building has reached the end of its life. And so we are recommending to remove it. And so that is a new thing because, and you'll see exactly why we have to watch this as we go through a couple other slides, but that's where we're at with the demo and the replacement. This slide here, this goes back to the lease analysis and the trying to establish a market rate for our buildings. And if you know anything about our MROs or the maintenance, repair, overhaul businesses that are out there, any of our businesses out there, most of our rates have been historically right at the 120 to 180 cents, $1.80, $1.20 to $1.80 per square foot. That has given us no money to put into reinvest into the buildings. Dean Baldwin, and this happened before I got here, the city went out and borrowed money against the city's leverage to repair the roof on the Dean Baldwin building. Now, we received some EDA funding. We received a lot of different dollars, but we also went into a little bit of debt to replace that roof. That was the right thing to do. The value of all of these buildings needed to be taken care of. We need to make sure that we can create enough money out there that can roll back into the property. So when you look at this map again, if you look, it is everything that is essentially south of Earl Cummings Drive, roads like Challenger Street that runs along most of the hangars over on the right side. That is part of what I consider the air center. So following the Alexandria authority model is that we need to make sure that our lease rates are established so that they cover all of the costs that are associated with the air center. Otherwise, the city or somebody else is going to have to pick up and help maintain the operations, because what we want to do is we want to do it kind of like with the legislative dollars. We want that money to mean something. We want to build something a little bit nicer. We don't want to lose it in the shuffle of stuff that if our lease rates were where they have to be. So with that said, the minimum lowest rate that we are pushing for our aviation related businesses is $4.20. We do have a couple of negotiations going on that we are allowing a little bit of time to ramp up to that. So all we're doing then at that point in time is we're using the future value of when we hit that. So the whole idea is that a 2 or 3 year window, we'll try to get to that future value of what that number is. Average rates in the middle, for the $7.20, and then of course the maximum rate of $9. I will say that on top of that, these are the minimums for each one of those levels. We, on the maximum rate, depending on the type of service that is looking for space out there, we could go to $15 a square foot. And we were actually with the Department of Health conversation before they decided they were going to remain with the work from home model. We were at $12 a square foot for that office type space out there at the Air Center. So we look at all of this thing and we try to work it all the way out there. We want to make sure that there's enough airside aviation related businesses with that. But we are pushing all of our current tenants toward that $4.20. Air Center growth strategy. This has been kind of an exciting thing to develop out, and it started with Mike Espiritu and myself talking about how to develop an active, vibrant growth strategy for the Air Center. And we've been working on this for a year and a half. It started during COVID. Is that right now we wait, and like I said earlier, we wait for somebody to come by and say, I'd like to build something out there. I'd like to do business in Roswell. Well, the problem is that time is money for every business out there. And so the whole idea is that when it comes to our infrastructure, we're utilizing what a lot of the economic development that is utilized in retail trade centers and the utility companies. Wastewater treatment plants do this all the time. When you hit a certain capacity level, you start planning for the future of it. You start planning to add something else to it. That's a very good strategy that we use. And so we've established right now currently, unless the council decides they want to go to a different level, we're saying that the city-owned buildings, when they hit a 70% occupancy level, when we have that many of them full, we need to start looking at increasing our stock out at the Air Center. We have 4,000 acres that can be developed. We have a lot of different methods in order to get that done. So we need to start now on how are we going to start meeting that. Conversely, on the other side of this thing, the 30%, If the Air Center has 30% more empty space out there, then we should be looking at our rate structure. We should be looking at how can we keep our businesses functioning out there? And so the 70-30 growth strategy it's a twofold approach. One, we need to be preparing for the future based upon what's out there. Two, if we can't get somebody to rent a space out there, then generally we have something that is not working properly. I will say that the Roswell Air Center right now is considered full, and we are at 95.6% occupied. We're 20% over what this growth strategy will be, and that's why the whole conversation with the new hangar from RUB that was sitting up there, that was why that was important. That's why all of this other work. We're happy Ascent's going out there, but that building will be owned by Ascent, and so it's not a city-owned structure that we can advance business with. But that means we can do both. So that's our Air Center growth strategy. Just some statistics, just so you know how we get to these numbers and everything. Total square footage at the Air Center under roof is 1.9 million square feet. Air Center operations are owned by others is 601,000. So the area, the terminal, the Sky Building. The Sky Building we do not own. We have the ability that if they cease to function, then they will turn over that asset to us. But it is a Sky hangar out there. We lease out 1.2 million square feet right now. We have about 57,000 square feet not leased. So when you look at the current available amount for leasing 1.3 million, we have 4.4% of our square feet not leased. And if you base that up on the 70% growth, we should have 917,000 square feet of building space to reach that occupancy factor. Throw on top of that Mr. Spritu, myself, was able to go up and tour RUB Building Systems USA plant, their corporate offices up in Portland, Maine, and we started to develop a relationship with them. When we utilize that fabric type hangar structure for warehousing, for hangar space and everything else, it lowers the cost of doing the buildings by at least 20%. And I think like the Ascent project, we looked at it, almost 36% is the value of by building a RUB building system for the Ascent, which is what they're planning on doing. We believe that we can move faster and more economical by utilizing this creative system in order to try to grow. Financing support, this is something I'm really excited with. You can see Jenna Lanford, of course, has come over with us. We have a lot of those parcels. When you look at that map and you drive around Earl Cummings, we have a lot of open property that is ready for anybody to put a building on, whether it be for auxiliary services, industry, or on the air side. And so you're going to start seeing some of these signs going up, lease available. I will say that you'll probably see some that'll say build to suit, design build, and I'll cover that over there. So we have, for the last 5 years, been working on this whole model. One, it started with the city property up in the city proper, trying to figure out what do we do with these properties we acquire through liens. Same thing out at the Air Center. We don't sell the property, but we lease it out to those individuals. Somebody can come out and build a building tomorrow if they would like to. So we have short and long-term land and or building leases. We now have the model based upon what we've done with the Rocky Mountain Arsenal building, based upon what we did with Dean Baldwin, based on our relationship with Ascent, and our current conversation on Hangar 84 Doghouse project. We have the ability to build to suit. We have the ability to do design build. We have the ability to do low interest gap financing. Those things are very important within the business climate in order to do that. Our whole goal is to not replace what type of financing they should have, but gap financing means when they're borrowing from the bank and they still have this gap, this is where economic development actually excels at. And so the whole idea is that we are going to help close those gaps in order to get those done. We're actually leveraging the city with the Ascent project. We're actually leveraging the city funds in order to help get this infrastructure built. And it's a short little window of time. I mean, we've got the state helping with that, with LETA as well too. The $5 million, the $3 million that are going into that. LETA money is a $4 million into that investment. And so that is through a rent abatement. And so they're paying a cent than a cent's paying the city for the improvements that we're putting out there. So this is going to be, this will be very substantial for everybody in the near future as we continue to develop out this whole model, because again, we have 4,000 acres. Same way as the city operates with our utility bills and everything else, critical mass, the increased population keeps rates lower, keeps our cost in check. Same thing happens out there. If more people are out there, more businesses are out there, we have less of a problem with workforce. We have less of a problem with all those needs that are out there. Really quickly, so we talked about people, we talked about the buildings, we talked about the terminal. Now I'm going to talk about the infrastructure, the support network as well too. So we have our big aviation component out there. We have the commercial flights. That's a very important part of the whole business, is the people flying and coming and going through Roswell. Throw on top of that, we do military and civilian testing facility. We have a lot of people coming out because our runway is not grooved. They have a lot of braking testing and everything going on. Navy's been out here. Navy is coming out more often as well. And so we're a testing facility. On top of that, I guess our potatoes, our meat and potatoes of our entire industry sectors out there is the MRO operations, and which is the maintenance, repair, and overhaul services that all these planes do. The one thing that we haven't done a lot of that we're trying to get into now are those back shops. And so the term within economic development is cluster development, where they are able to work with each other. And so I think the term that the aviation industry utilizes, cradle to grave a plane. So you construct it here, you do the engine testing, you do all of that, you build it out, and then you ship it out. We have a really small little market because of the size of our air center that gets kind of lost in the shuffle a little bit, but it is an area that we can continue to grow in, and that's general aviation. So the T hangars become very important to that. All the little smaller planes and jets that are flying in and out. What we like about that is activity to the air center, not the big beasts of industry and jobs and everything, but the activity in general aviation is very important to the long-term effect of our air center. All right, we go into the vehicular because these parts have to get somewhere. They're not flying everything in and out. They do truck a lot of stuff as well too. So Roswell is not situated on an interstate, but we have a 4-lane highway system that is to die for. And I think if the state completes their work from here to Texas border, and they get those passing lanes in there, we will be able to go anywhere we can with the 4-lane highway system for all the trucking needs and everything else. And so then on top of that is rail service. And on the map, and we get lost a little bit because if you know where the rail is across on the other side of 285, that's where the main trunk of the line is. Then the spur comes all the way across. It crosses private property to get onto the air center. We have 13.3 acres of private owned property on the base. We have 45 acres of city owned property along the rail service. There's 198 acres of private property along the air center. So there is that much potential of industrial expansion that utilizes rail service for that benefit. And it depends on the type of product out there. I think that's why Airgun works so well, is because it's an asphalt emulsion. They use the black tanks in order to package that up, and they're able to ship it up and down the line. But there's a lot of different uses for the rail service. I would hate to see us eliminate that type of infrastructure because it'll be a slow growing one, I think, but it'll be a very stable one as well too within the system. Just really quickly, I think I have 3 slides on the projects. I was trying to count up on this one here. There is, looks like 8, 9, 10, almost $11 million if we do the passenger terminal for just the temporary work. We've already purchased the warehouse building from Rob. Hangar 84 doghouse project is an $8.8 million project. The Ascent hangar is $17 million estimated. That of the Ascent project, 9.2 million, 9.4 million of that is city supported funding. The rest is all the vertical or the building itself on top of all that infrastructure. There's about $20 million of city funding that is going into that air center in just these large scale projects. And that doesn't include all of the money that is coming out of the federal funding and the state aviation on our runways, our taxiways, our aprons and everything. So this is our current listing of our large scale projects that are in some state of operations within that. I did put in there in the passenger terminal. We believe that at least $2 billion should be going to expanding that for the temporary use of trying to keep up with how we're running in and out the commercial flights. But we really need to look at the full replacement or the expansion of the current, and that's going to run anywhere up to about $28 million for that large scale project. I like to do things in large scale, medium scale, and small scale just because large scale projects are difficult to find all the funding for that and lining all of those. They're very complex type projects. Medium projects, not as many different type of funding sources, not as many types of individuals that are working within the system. So some of these, the parking expansion at the terminals right now being done with the MAP funding. We have the certified site designation on the Northeast base property. We don't know exactly what we're going to have to invest in that, but we are developing out the plan right now because we want to be able to market that. The general repairs, upgrades, and removals of the existing buildings. That's a big medium scale project because we have not done as much of that as we should have been doing all along, hindsight being 2020. So the whole idea now is that as we work on improving the leases, we're going to reinvest those monies back into the air center. And I think that's the struggle that everybody thinks they're having. We're not a profit center. We're not trying to send that money to the stakeholders. We're trying to make sure that the air center becomes self-sustaining and can operate with the money that we can roll back into it. Ongoing taxiway ramp and apron improvements that comes out of some of the discretionary and non-discretionary federal dollars. We have the baggage drop-off area. We have the baggage claim area. We have the preparing of the ticket counter. These are medium scale projects, and the ones that I knew that I could list out. I'm sure if we talk to Scott and Steve out at the Air Center, we'll find a few more of those that are in some semblance of preparation. And then you have all the small project ones. All of these have an impact out there, and we've talked about them throughout the summer. The monsoon season kind of slowed us down a little bit with the sweeping and restriping of the parking spaces. If we're going to hold the facility at a high standard, when you go out there, that yellow has to pop. All the little lines and everything. Any weeds that are growing in the parking lot, pull that standard down a little bit. All of these things have to happen. The reopening of the value-added services of the cafe and the bar are all there. I listed out a couple of the completed ones because I think these were discussed last year or the year before, and Scott and his staff just took it on and they got all the work done. I think we had a little bit of help from other staff members as well too, and some contractors. So we scraped off the parking lot across on the other side of the terminal for longer term parking. That parking lot was there. It was just buried underneath a bunch of sand and dirt that had accumulated over time. And so we did that. We worked with the NMDOT to expand the parking lot that's north of the terminal, just west of their building, of where they do some of their storage and everything. And we put millings down. Lewis is great at utilizing millings to expand out good quality parking areas at a low cost. And we can always go back on top of the millings with the overlays and everything else. And we can buy time while we're trying to figure out what the heck we have to do. But these, in my mind, these are the smaller projects. This list could have been 3 or 4 pages long. I just wanted to give you examples of what we're doing on the smaller scale. Last slide. So opinions and ideas from many of the partnerships, such as the state, Chaves County, the EDC, the chambers, local businesses, and the citizens. They're paramount to our whole structure. It goes back to what the chair said really early on. Everybody's opinions, everybody's thought process within this thing tempers, and it changes how we direct and how we tackle things, and it helps us with that administrative strategy. That doesn't mean that we always get along. That doesn't mean that we're always moving in a cohesive direction altogether, because we have different priorities within all these systems that we're trying to deal with. I will say, though, is that we go back to the documented decisions of the elected body. So everything I talk about here is what I call the administrative philosophy of the Air Center. This is This is me trying to direct 655 employees and trying to take care of that asset, trying to move it forward, trying to make more things happen with that. I am responsible to the city council. The city council at any point in time can step in and actually help me tighten my vision, help me focus a little bit differently. And they have every right and responsibility to alter that implementation. They hear every one of the partnerships. They hear every one of the stakeholders as well too. The challenge we have is that based upon the strength of all of those things, we're trying to move this thing forward. So I guess, and it's probably not the best way to say it, but short of having a stronger vision from the elected leadership is how I try to make things happen within the structure that I understand. I always call it going out on the limb a little bit, because the idea is that I have to make sure that the city continues to operate. If there are gaps within any of our decision-making, whether it be the mission, whether it be whatever it is out there, I have the need. It's almost a Jurassic Park analogy. I think that's probably it. I'm going to close the gap of the DNA with exactly what I think needs to happen. And I lean on a lot of different people, whether it be Mike McLeod with Excel, whether it be Mike Espiritu with the EDC, whether it be Bill Williams with the Chaves County. We're talking continuously about these things, individual city councilors and all of that. So I will leave you with that. This is really that 30,000 foot level, trying to give you a very clear picture of we're not sitting back on our heels. We're not waiting for a lot of different things to happen. We can continue to look at all different types of structures out there. But I believe that the things that we're doing now will have substantial impact to our success of our future. And it goes right back to exactly having all these conversations. We fight like family. We struggle with each other time and time again. But I'll tell you that we've learned to live within that structure as well too, and we can continue to advance the Air Center as that regional asset. I look back at the MRG for the Phoenix flight. When we went out there and did that, EDC was very paramount within that structure. We went out and we had everybody from the region, whether it be Ruidoso, whether it be Carlsbad, whether it be Lincoln County, Lee County, Eddy County. We had so many different partners help us fund into that MRG to make sure that we had a Phoenix flight here. It's stabilized. That Phoenix flight is stabilized because of the partnerships, because of the use of that. I believe that MRG is going to become very important for the Denver flight and for that structure. We have some of the small grant money for that, but we're going to need our partnerships as well too to make that to prove the proof of concept with that. Mr. Chair, I'll stop at that point in time. I thank you for your time, and I can answer any questions based upon this report.
Thank you, Manager. I appreciate that and the work you put into bringing that forward. And I think it does give a picture. Obviously this whole thing's in motion, but it kind of is a good picture of where we are, maybe to fill that in. So I guess first I want to open up for questions on comments on anything that he talked about. And then if we can go back to that slide with the projects specifically, but open up to any, and certainly commissioners, if you want to jump in at any time as well too, or any of the counselors that are here, feel free to chime in. Okay.
I mean, I think your presentation was good, Joe. I think that we all have skin in the game with this deal. And I see all the projects and I know that for Chaves County, I know we've started with the first $5 million. 3 of it has gone to the Ascent project, but we should have some more. And I think our ultimate goal for the county was to bring infrastructure utilities over to the east side of the airport. And then there's several reasons for that. One of them, what was used to be Mystic is now AVEX, but you've got AVEX that's even talking about wanting to expand with those back shops you're talking about. But you go further east and now you're across Wyo Road into some residential area that can be a good thing for the county and the city of Roswell to provide those folks with those water, sewer, whatever utilities come across. So hopefully, I know we have a meeting tomorrow for a joint resolution to support the funds that will do great things for the Air Center. And I look forward to the county and city working closely together to help get those things accomplished.
Sure.
I have a question for Mike, if you wouldn't mind jumping in. Can you talk to us a little bit more about your perspective on the 70-30 type management and why those numbers are important? You know, we've talked about those a lot, and I think we're basing a lot of the direction we're talking about going on that. And I just kind of was hoping to maybe get a little more background on that.
So that 70-30 split is a pretty basic policy among communities all over the country. And especially for us, it's important, it's critical for the Air Center. And why that is because as you've heard me say, and the mayor heard so eloquently at the MRO show, we don't have the inventory to support companies that are seeking to move someplace. We had companies ready to go if we had hangars. We didn't. We don't have any. I think the 70-30 split is, I would say, I would probably be less conservative, say we need more like a 60-40 because we have such a need. The back shops are one thing, but the speed of market and building the infrastructure to support aircraft can be quite lengthy. The partnership we've created with RUB, and we hope to continue to develop, is going to be really essential to creating more opportunities faster. It's important that speed of market, your business person understand that. But the 70-30 split is needed. Obviously, you saw the numbers. We don't have the resources. If we had them, we would be better positioned to be attractive, more attractive. The whole world knows who we are. They know about Roswell, they know about New Mexico in that regard. And that's why, because of that global brand, we should capitalize and use our Air Center to be part of that solution to bring those companies here to our town. So, Mr. Chairman, I think 70-30 is, like I said, it's conservative. I go a little more than that because I really believe we need that. When you already have 2 or 3 companies looking to possibly utilize the RUB building that the city council approved at the last meeting, it tells you the story already. And those are current tenants. So without the new tenants even being considered, I think that we're already, if you will, we're already behind the power curve. That's why the 70-30 split is really a great plan forward to an Air Center, to move an Air Center to be an attractive location for a company.
So Mike, real quick, is there any way to get RUB to come to Roswell since they're in Portland? I mean, I would think that we would be a perfect place for them to come and grow.
Mr. Chairman and Chairman, sorry, it's kind of interesting. But anyway, that's a great question. I don't think they'll move. However, what Joe and I have started to develop with the CEO of RUB is to try to partner even stronger with our Air Center, because they haven't done that anywhere else in the country, across the world, where we could be a RUB, what's the term? RUB
Authorized Air Center.
Air Center. And receive better pricing, structured faster, and better customer service as a result. And I think we already had a discussion with the CEO when we were on our trip, and he seemed genuinely interested in that. I think that our display, your display of not only the Ascent project, but this new addition just a couple of weeks ago is a great indication of how we can move forward with them in partnership. I don't think we move the corporate office, that would be nice, but I think that presence alone will help really raise the standard for us here in New Mexico.
Sure. Thank you.
Well, to add on to that one, the RUB product, buying the RUB warehouse hangar, whatever we want to call it, at the discounted price that we got, they are also going to come and assemble it. And the cool thing about that building is if we need it moved, they can come disassemble it and move, put it someplace else. So they will come here and they, and then they'll actually physically see the outline and see how much room we have. And who knows, we might be an outlet for them later on.
The satellite office here.
And Mr. Chairman, it's great marketing for us It really truly is, because they have products all over the globe. And if other people know that they have a stronger presence here, then I think the light bulbs will start to shine. You're right. That new building, they are coming to do the installation. They're going to see our air center firsthand. The CEO himself says he wants to visit. And so I'm encouraged by your question, because I really believe, Ms. Chairman, that there is interest by RUB. And I know there's a lot of other companies out there, and it doesn't have to be a pure fabric. I hate to see fabric because it's not fabric. It's a little misleading. But the material is so incredible, made in Sweden, that it can also be used with other types of materials, with brick and mortar type structures, with metal sheathing, a number of things. We saw an airport terminal at a small regional airport that was a combination of all three of those, with a beautiful brick. I'm not sure how high that one. It was brick wall, right? Brick walls, and then they had some metal pieces to it, and they had the RUB roof, which again we saw a building that was there since 1983. So I know that I'm convinced of the product. I've seen it when I was in the military. Joe's seen the product as well now. So I think it's a product that'll stand the test of time.
Well, and I would say that companies like Avex who have come in here now are looking to expand, would be really interested in, two global companies. That's what it's all about. And that's the opportunities that we have here.
Okay.
Well, and the other thing I'd add on to yours is everybody knows us. They don't know us for our largest runway in North America, or next to the largest runway in North America, plus another almost 10,000 foot runway. And once they start realizing that, aviation knows, big aviation knows, because Boeing comes here all the time to test. But once the other smaller places know, then they'll get excited. So, thank you.
One thing that I want to point out as we've been on this journey about how to take this airport and utilize it, from my part for the past couple of years, two things that I've noticed. Number one is that this Ascent project, it takes some of our money, it takes some of state's money. We can't expect someone to come in and just foot the whole bill. And I think that if we do want to continue to expand that airport, we need to be prepared to invest in it. And that's why we certainly, if for any reason at all, is why we need partners in that, because the city's resources are limited. The other thing too that I'm excited about what we're talking about here though, is that we are approaching it, even you look at the fee structures, you look at the ability to invest, the approach of even saying, hey, this is what we have to offer, and we're approaching it, we're trying to run it with a business mind frame. And I appreciate that. That's always hard for a bureaucracy to, a city government to do that. But that's something that I think we've been after for a while. And I think that we're taking steps in the right direction, and certainly we're going to stay on top of it. But, I think that we have to have the mind frame that as a business, as a city, as a business, the airport as a business, we're going to have to invest into that to see returns on it. And we need to be, and I appreciated, the council, when we had this opportunity to pick up this small hangar, but a hangar, it's small being the size of planes that it takes, I guess, as opposed to the big hangars, that we need to, the council is in a place where, hey, we're ready to invest. I know that it's hard to, as we discuss these things, it's really hard to look at, okay, the short-term investment versus the long-term investment of some of the infrastructure. I appreciate the county with the first $5 million that you received, that we did take the largest chunk of that money and we put that into the now. Obviously, if we go back to that project, oh, there it is, the project list. These are all, we're obviously as a city, we're thinking about very much the now. The now is super important to us. And the thing is that every time I have a conversation, somebody tells me about something, I always say, hangars, 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 hangars. I keep repeating that so we don't lose that focus, because hangars are what like Mike said, and those people have been to these conferences, which I have not, if we had hangars, they could come here and get to work. And so we have to have the courage as local governments to put some money out there and make that investment. If we're really willing to run this airport with a business mind frame, it's going to take investment. We can't just wait for, what's the talk is, the talk is wrong, the dreaming. It's easy to dream. It's like, oh, Boeing's going to come in here and dump a bunch of money in here and also solve all our problems. We have to be self-reliant. We have to be self-sufficient. We have to go out there. We have to work it. And I think that we're moving in the right direction, but we certainly are going to need, the county's help, the state's help, EDC, and anybody else who can twist their arm into helping us. Going forward. So any specific, I know that we're going to have a resolution tomorrow that the Council Perry's been working on that has some very specific projects on it. That's my only thing. Anything else that we want to talk about specific projects? I want to give anybody the opportunity. We certainly don't have to. I think Joe covered the information that I wanted to be sure that we were discussing in this committee. Larry, you got something?
The most exciting thing I've heard in the last few weeks, I guess I heard 6-7 weeks ago, those ugly 3 oil aviation fluid, that on East Hobson Road goes in front of the city council to tear them down. And the city council, they approve it, those 3 ugly things are gone. And the land, we could put hangars on. And that, for the county, that's the lead into OK Road.
Yep.
I know Laprino, I can remember, I think it was 5-6 years ago, Laprino would not take a new prospective employee down Hobson Road. They'd drive around all over, so they didn't have to go down Hobson Road. Here we go. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
City manager mentioned about the certified site, the 44-acre parcel at the Air Center. Where we're at, just for your information, is the EDC and the city, we partnered together to pay for 2 studies. One was environmental phase 1, which is done, and a geotech survey, which is done now too. Both have been submitted to Excel, and although the site's been already certified as a ready site, it's now being moved towards the certified site. I surveyed the site with BNSF Railways, the gentleman I know from Phoenix. We have to walk the site, and very soon BNSF will be towards certified site. So we're very close. And then not only will we market it, but both entities will also help us in marketing throughout the country.
Great. Thank you. Thanks. Anything else? If not, we will move on. I appreciate everybody who came for this to contribute. Appreciate the report from the city manager. Okay, we're moving on to item number 4, Nancy Lopez Golf Course at Spring River Cart Path. Commissioner Hart.
Mr. Chairman, got a request to do a quick review on the golf course cart maintenance. And from an aerial photo, our GIS unit, Linda Allen came up with, we have 12,000 feet of cart paths. And the course from the blue tees is 19,000 linear feet. So it's assuming a 25% area that we would remove and repair, similar like we did with the Hondo Trail that we're bidding right now, and the Spring River Trail we just completed, a 2-inch overlay with tax. Preliminary estimate is 500,000. So, I mean, informational only, and for taking any direction or any future steps you want us to pursue or analyze or review.
Thank you. Yeah, so this was something that was brought to my attention by a constituent. And the constituent had a conversation with the Speaker of the House, who in a informal conversation said he might put some money to it. But and regardless of that conversation, though, I thought it would worthwhile just to kind of look at this and just kind of bring it to our attention as a need. You know, the golf course among our quality of life services generates the most revenue as a percentage of its costs. And this is something that, you know, we want to make sure that we don't get one of those maintenance things we don't get too far behind on. And so that's kind of what we brought it for, just to kind of bring it to the attention of this committee. I don't think there's a particular action item right now. I know that, I think that Joe, I'm sorry, you're still here. I think Joe went out and drove it.
No, I can't drive on the golf course at all. No. But no, one of the things that is coming up, just for the sake of this committee and the city council, is that we had the all-inclusive groundbreaking for the all-inclusive park out there. And there was a request at that time for some additional potential of getting additional legislative dollar for that. So November 18th at the city council meeting, we are intending to bring at least a resolution for consideration of adding that project and possibly this one to the ICIP list in order to do that, because the legislative body cannot act unless we have it on that list. And so I think in both cases, they've asked, just make it be on there, and we're not changing the top 5 or anything, but just be aware that the more projects on the list, and of course, there's a chance we may get projects that weren't on our priority at first, but that was the intent, is that we'll be bringing it forward by November for the November 18th to consider that process. So.
Can you speak, if you can? You might not be ready for this, and that's fine. Can you speak as far as the transition what's happening with the zoo? I'm not the zoo, I'm sorry, the golf course, as far as that, you know, I think we've always been in charge of maintenance anyway, but
Certainly, yes, sir.
But how do we make sure that we're keeping up with this?
Yeah. So just an update on the golf course itself is that it had been a contracted service for about 12 years. The contract is expired. Well, they actually expired in September, at the end of September. For the current, it had no extensions left on that. So we had one of two choices, was to go back out for RFP to consider leaving the pro shop underneath a contracted service with our city employees maintaining the course. We've chosen to bring it all in-house, and so we actually have already offered, and it has been accepted for a golf course manager pro in order to take over the pro shop area as well. So we're going to combine that with our city employees that are taking care of the course as well, to put it underneath that one umbrella as a city asset, for a complete city asset for a while, and see what we can do with that. So along with that, you're going to start seeing some changes within our capital improvement structure as well too. We have desires of at least modernizing the golf pro shop and trying to expand that out. And then, of course, trying to work within all those parameters. So our current contract, we have extended it through the end of December 31st. The new golf course manager, golf pro, will be on board November 1st. So we'll have an overlap so that we can make sure that we take care of, over 12 years, a lot of stuff that had been the golf pro, the contracted service, is owned. All the equipment is owned by the golf pro. So we were trying to find out what he wants to keep and what we can take on, and then we'll try to separate in the best way possible. So those are the things that are happening. I think one of the things when I heard about the constituent worrying about the golf paths, of course, I've already directed Jim Burris to go out there and make sure that we have cold patch in the holes so that at least the pathway can be traversed. Do some crack sealing as well too, to make it look so it's better maintained. And so we are trying to put together a whole list of information for the city council. So just like the zoo, just like the museum, we're pulling the same underneath our umbrella in order to reinvigorate the vision of what we think this asset is.
Thank you. Any other questions? Just
So we're talking $500,000 to redo the whole park.
Not redo.
Just top.
Again, this was all done last minute. We have not done an inspection, but based on the trails, we would assume 25% of the trail would have to be repaired due to tree roots, drainage failure, and other. So, and then you would go and put a 2-inch overlay over the entire trail.
And market to scale, I mean, doing it all at once is the 500, but if we piecemealed it and did it small, of course, would it go, the overall price go up, or we just?
I would say it'd be about the same.
Same, so if we did it over, a 4-year period of putting 125,000 into, of course, costs of things going up as we tend to, it might be more just because of inflation, but okay. Because $500,000, of course, if we can get the state to buy into it, then it's not that bad, but $500,000 just straight into it is a big chunk for, it's actually almost, well, almost double what we put into it on a yearly basis.
and something I do want to state, because I know there's, the council, the mayor, the staff, we've been working on trying to clean up our ICIP process to have a more focused and unified voice with that process. And certainly I think the council, we all need to carefully consider that in this process about adding that as well. I think that's a worthy discussion. I think those are valid points as I've been talking with people about this. So, however, I felt that it was worth adding to the discussion. Whether it's worth putting on the list or not, I think is another thing to say. So,
well, and as we said, the ICIP list can be as long as we want it to be. I mean, we have a priority that we put at the top, but it has to be on that list for us to get state funds. So we might as well add it to the list, whether it's 500th or it's number 1. If it's on the list, the state might see fit to put money towards it. So.
Great.
And along the lines of we stage it, I would get with the engineer, would get with the golf course and see what their priority is.
Which areas needed first.
Then we would go with their priorities.
Great. Any other discussion, questions, comments? Okay, we will move on then. Let's go to regular item number 5. Commissioner.
Hey, Mr. Chair, committee members, here asking you to consider award of variable frequency drive installation. That's including the well motor casing, building extension and upgrades at REACT well number 1 to Alpha Southwest in the amount of $267,822.42. Procurement shall be to utilizing City of Las Vegas, New Mexico maintenance contract, which was issued under an RFP process. This well is the one that is directly east of the new water tower out at the Air Center. This will be one of the first wells at the Air Center that'll be installed with the variable frequency drive. Installation of VFDs is a continuing work to upgrade all of the 20 wells. We have done 7 so far. This will be well number 8. VFDs slowly start up and slowly shut down the well motors. So it kind of slowly increases the pressure and the volume of flow coming out of the well. And then it slowly ramps down and decreases that pressure. So it takes a lot of strain off of the system. But it takes a lot of stress off the piping, valves, everything else. So it prevents a lot of damage. And also it decreases the electrical consumption at the wells and increases the life cycle of everything attached to it. And that's just kind of just a control box in the picture right there. That just shows you just the variable frequency drive is inside the control box right there. So whenever they do that, they do all the electrical, all of new electrical, they'll do the motor, the casing, everything attached to it. So everything's upgraded along with the new variable frequency drive. This item will be funded in the FY22 source of supply budget. I'm just asking you to consider award of AFD installation upgrades for React Well number 1. Staff recommendation is proceed as presented and sent to full council. And with that, I stand for any questions.
You said this has been budgeted?
Yes, yes, sir.
Mayor?
This being paid for out of the airport enterprise fund or the water department enterprise fund?
It's being paid for out of the water enterprise fund right now. If there's any, we're just doing business as usual right now at the current time. If there are any shoring up of funds at a later date, then I will work with Joe Neb on.
I'm sorry that so many people left, because this is one of the issues that is confronting the air center. I have been an advocate for cleaning up the way we do funding out there. Too long, the air center has been getting a free ride off the water department. And if this is in fact an air center asset, these wells, then they should be paying for it. I don't think it is an air center asset any longer. I think the water department has bought those water rights, those wells, over the last 40-something years. Mr. Nahar is smiling at me because he's heard me make this argument for 2 years. And we're going to have a discussion about this at the next city council meeting. And I am going to the whole issue of the air center. If it is to function cleanly and on its own, we need to clean up the way we've been doing funding. And I don't think that water department should be subsidizing the air center. And I say that as someone who has advocated for this air center for over 8 years. I have fought hard to get the funding for it, but this is flat wrong for the air center to get free stuff. Either water department runs water or not. And the water department has done great work. This is an example. The water towers are an example. All the other work that's been done out there, the water line to sky, all of that stuff has been handled by the water department. And I think all the revenue, which is currently going to the air center, needs to go to the water department. And I don't think there needs to be any transfer of funds from water department to the air center for quote water rights. But that's a decision the council is going to have to make on the 18th. Sorry, I used you as a prop.
A question on that. So do we have something that's actually pending coming from legal?
It's on legal this Thursday,
Okay.
approved by the airport advisory.
Because that's the thing I think is like, we've talked about this for a long time. We just need to make a decision on it now, what we want to do with it. So we'll look forward to seeing that from legal.
Just so you understand, city manager and I have different perspectives.
Okay.
His perspective is that there should be a transfer for the quote water rights, a leasing or a payment for the water rights. My position is that water department has bought the water rights. So this is an unusual situation, candidly. We don't have these very often, but we're also very open and above board about it. So it's in the hands of the council. But if you give me a 5-5 opportunity.
Yeah, we know what you'll do.
Yeah.
We know. Well, I think the thing that's important is that we've talked about it long enough. Let's get it to council. Let's get a vote on it, decide one way or the other and move forward. So
I agree.
on the item, on the well thing, variable flow.
Frequency drive.
Right. Thank you. Any questions or comments? You said it was budgeted?
It is budgeted.
Okay, so then if there's no more comments, I would entertain a motion on a since it's budgeted, I would just assume put it to the consent agenda.
I move to, I move to send to the consent agenda, considering approval for the award of VFD installation, well motor casing, building extension and upgrades at RW1 to Alpha Southwest in the amount of $267,822.42.
Second.
Aye.
Okay. The motion is second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, item number 6, 2022 manhole rehab project.
Mr. Chairman, consider, or have you, before you, consider award of ITB-22-009, 2022 sewer manhole rehab project to corrosion resistant coating, an amount of $212,433.76, which includes tax. Quite simply, this is our 20th year plus of doing our annual sewer manhole repair. I'm requesting that you send this to City Council for award.
Discussion. And this has been budgeted?
Yes, it has.
Okay, great. Well, then I would entertain a motion to the consent agenda.
Okay. I move to recommend approval of the award of ITB-22-009 2022 sewer manhole rehab project to Corrosion Resistant Coatings Incorporated in the amount of $212,433.76 to the consent agenda for November 18th, 2021.
I have a motion, second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, item number 7.
Chairman Trent's has medical issues with his family. What you have before you is to ratify change order for work to be provided by Roof Care utilizing CES procurement to perform additional repairs to the A.O. Smith roof in the amount of $152,414.15. City Council in August had approved procurement for RTF roof replacement and $627,000 plus dollars. With the recent rain and wind this season, it blew some of the substrate off, requiring more. That's what the wind did when it got underneath everything and blew it off. You're asked to ratify because the guys had to make a decision to go ahead and order the materials. Otherwise, we couldn't order the material until March 2022 because of the shortage of materials. So in short, you're asked to ratify the change order for $152,414.15, which is above and beyond the $627,000 PO. And as far as if it was budgeted, it is budgeted under capital improvement. I don't know if we would want to send this one to consent or to full council.
Full council.
Okay.
Yeah.
You good, Mr. Fuentes?
Yeah, just one clarification. It is not budgeted because it wasn't originally in the scope, but I mean, we will have to shore it up at a later date.
Great. Bummer. But I do think it's something like this, we want to send to full council, understanding why we're having spent more money than we originally thought. Any questions or comments on this? If not, I entertain a motion.
Yes, sir. I move to recommend ratifying change order for work to be provided by Roof Care, utilizing CES procurement to perform additional repairs to the A.O. Smith roof in the amount of $152,414.15 to the full council on November 18th.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Item number 8.
Mr. Chairman, committee, what you have before you is consider award of ITB-22-008, 2022 annual maintenance contract to Abraham Construction, Albuquerque, New Mexico, in the amount of $9,703.92. This is the annual maintenance contract that when they bid, they only bid on one item for certain widgets or whatever. And when you give out a work order, engineering will come up with the cost, and each individual department pays for their work order. If you remember last month, we had You remember last month we had the Spring River repair and we figure out what the problem is and then we put a cost to it and we'll get it fixed. This contract does have a 2-year possible. You go 1 year and if both parties agree at the end of the first year and hold the prices the same, then we do an extension for a 2nd year. And you may send this one to consent.
Questions or comments? I would like this one to go ahead and go to the full council. I think I think that they need to be aware of this. I don't see that. I think it'll work fine, but I entertain a motion.
I move to recommend approval of the award of ITB-22-008 2022 annual maintenance contract to Abraham's Construction Incorporated, Albuquerque, New Mexico, in the amount of $9,703.92 to be sent to the full council on November 18th, 2021.
Motion second.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes. Thank you. Item number 9, department reports.
Mr. Chairman, if the committee has any questions on the department reports that are part of the packet?
Any discussion on those? Not at this time. And then,
And you do have people online.
yes, is anybody online wishing to comment? Rita, did you want to say anything?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you. Good, okay. If that's all, then we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great evening. Sorry for keeping you late.
5:36.